Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon at the final, yet not the least important event organized by the World Bank Group at this MDB pavilion as part of COP28. My name is Aurélien Boyer. I'm the Global Manager for Climate Finance and Policy at IFC. It's my pleasure to moderate the discussion today at the invitation of our bank colleagues. The theme will be stepping up from to the challenge, a roadmap for trusted, transparent carbon market. The starting point is relatively simple, and I think most of us are aware of it. We all see the potential for carbon market to mobilize the funding needed from the global north to finance climate action in the global south. Yet, what we witnessed in the last year is turmoil in the market and a need to rebuild confidence in the system. Against this backdrop, the World Bank published last week a roadmap and a proposal on how to restore confidence in the market in a collective effort. We at the World Bank believe, like we at the World Bank Group, we can have this convening power to bring together all the key stakeholders in the carbon market ecosystem, maybe from principal setter to independent standard bodies, rating agency, validator, verifiers, host government, private sector, etc. And the conversation today is very much in this spirit and to kickstart the discussion on how we can all mobilize together to get to a positive outcome. I would not like to extend a warm welcome to our panelists who represent the different stakeholders I mentioned today. First, sitting in the first seat, Dirk Forrester, President and CEO of the International Emission Trading Association and board member of Verra. Welcome, Dirk. On the right, Anne Howard, Senior Director of Accreditation, Validation and Verification at the ANSI National Accreditation Board, representing the International Accreditation Forum, IAF. Welcome, Anne. Next, Benedict Shia, Director General, National Climate Change Secretariat at the Prime Minister's Office of Singapore. And finally, joining us here in Dubai, Adika Jamshed, Climate Policy Specialist, Ministry of Climate Change, Pakistan. Very much welcome and really appreciate in particular the presence of Jamshed and Benedict in the context of like very intense and active negotiation that are happening right now. So thank you for joining us in person. And joining us virtually, I'd like to introduce Annette Nazareth, Chair of the Board at the Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Markets, which many of us knew by the acronym of ICVCM. So thank you, Annette, for joining us. And Samuel Gill, co-founder, president of Silvera, also joining us. So welcome and welcome to Dubai, Jill and Annette. So thank you again for joining us today. To start, I'd like to invite Pierre Guignon, Senior Climate Finance Specialist at the World Bank, who would give us a quick overview of the roadmap that the World Bank has developed. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Aurélien, and thank you to the panelists and the colleagues who are joining us today in the audience. I'm just going to say quick words on the World Bank activities and roadmap on carbon markets to set the context. As Aurélien mentioned, carbon markets have been at the front and center of the COP this year. And the key message has been that they can be a game changer, but only if there is trust and transparency. And there's been an unprecedented mobilization around these objectives, with everyone stepping up. And that's very much in this spirit that the World Bank, last week, our president unveiled our engagement roadmap on carbon markets to join this effort and this mobilization around increased action and collaboration on carbon markets. So this roadmap that we unveiled builds on more than 20 years of engagement in carbon markets. As you can see on the screen, there's a few logos of some of these initiatives that we are running to deliver with partners on carbon market. Behind each of them, there's a lot of donors that are providing the resources, but there's also a lot of countries that are benefiting from the support and a lot of partners that are working with us to deliver. Altogether, there's more than 4.8 billion in carbon funds that have been mobilized to date since 1999. 1.7 billion have been disbursed towards buying emission reductions, and that has represented 220 million tons of emission reductions. These funds have been used to deliver technical assistance to more than 60 countries, to build regulatory framework for carbon markets, MRV systems, registries. PMI is one of the key initiatives to make the countries ready. There's been a lot of work around innovation to develop carbon methodologies for large-scale programs. FCPF is a key initiative for RED+. We have the Biocarbon Fund, ASFL, that is doing RED+ and expanding to agriculture and land use. We have a lot of other initiatives that are working on energy access as well, like CDEV. We are also working to support countries to develop the market infrastructure. The climate warehouse is a key one. And there's also a lot of work that goes into knowledge and partnerships. We have a flagship report, the State Entrance. We actually released yesterday a special issue on international carbon market. And we also convene market players through the I4C forum, and also on specific topics, several clubs, such as the climate market clubs, where market players can discuss key technical agenda items of carbon markets. So now, with the roadmap that we unveiled, the idea is very much to take these efforts to the next stage, leveraging first the urgent need for financing, but also an increasing interest from countries in making use of carbon markets. And as I said, the unprecedented mobilization of market players around the need for integrity and scale. So the roadmap has been designed around 3 key results. The first one is supporting countries to unlock financing from carbon markets. As you know, with some of the funds that we are running, we are signing ERPAs. The FCPF is a major initiative that has signed 15 ERPAs with forest countries. And through these ERPAs and the programs that are supported, the countries that are supporting by FCPF, the 15 countries, are expected to generate up to 24 million ERs in 2024 and up to 126 million by 2028. The ERPAs are providing seed funding for the first ERs, but we're going to support all these countries to access carbon markets through auctions, helping them also to conclude direct sales, and also to work with the marketplaces, such as exchanges, to bring their ERs to the market. Beyond the very carbon revenues that they are generating, we're also working with colleagues such as IFC, MIGA, and the World Bank Treasury to use these carbon revenues to provide revenue streams to instruments such as bonds, such as guarantees that will provide upfront financing and larger financing for the underlying programs that are financed through these initiatives. Beyond the countries that we have worked on airpaths with, there's a broader group of countries that we have supported for readiness, and we are also going to work with these countries to bring them to the stage of monetization. FCPF, for example, has supported 47 countries to build readiness. Only 15 of them have been to the stage of the airpaths, but there's more than 30 countries that we can further support to take them to the monetization stage. The second pillar of the roadmap is around the design and implementation of large-scale reductions programs in the World Bank portfolio. So the World Bank has a large portfolio of financing for investment, but also for policy lending. And the idea is to systematize the support to countries for them to leverage these programs to more systematically monetize the emission results of these programs. We are working on a lot of innovative crediting methodologies for this to happen. At the jurisdictional scale for forestry, I mentioned FCPF. There's a lot of work also that is going through the Biocarbon Fund on agriculture. Sector level and policy-based crediting as well. We are working, for example, through the TCAF to develop a policy lending. Recently, earlier this year, we worked with the government of Uzbekistan on policy lending, on crediting lending, on the crediting policy operation, supporting the energy subsidy reform that the government is planning to implement. For this to happen, there's obviously also a lot of technical support that will be delivered for these countries to run these large-scale emission programs. The third pillar is about a deepening partnership to unlock the bottlenecks, to address the bottlenecks that are preventing market expansion. As I said, the PMI has delivered key support for countries to develop the institutional framework and the capacity to foster carbon markets. And we're going to do more of these, delivering support to countries to develop strategies on Article 6, to develop stronger regulatory frameworks, stronger MRV systems, and also registries. We're going to work also with more partners in the carbon market ecosystem to accelerate the operationalization of the integrity principle that have emerged through initiatives such as ICVCM and VCMI. We're going to enhance the support to all these new technical frameworks and new technologies that are emerging. And we're also going to work with partners on strengthening the financial integrity of the markets. Other initiatives that we've started to support are those that are pooling private capital to represent the future demand for the ERs that will be generated. There's one that was recently launched with the ETA. Last week, we also launched our own carbon market forum with carbon action forum with key participants present here today. Last one is around the climate action data trust that we are working with Singapore and other partners such as IETA here today. And the idea here is all the first connection that this climate action data trust has created, we're going to amplify and expand further linking to more registries, including in countries. So that's it for the quick context. Very much looking forward to the discussion and to continuing the collaboration with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre. And I promise this is a World Bank event. It's not a French event. It's a coincidence that Pierre and I are here, but we're very, very fortunate to have you today. I think we're going to focus from this presentation on Pillar 3. I think this idea of convening and having this discussion with the different stakeholders and build the trust and how to ramp up on like integrity and build this high integrity carbon credit. So my first question will be directed to Annette, Dirk, and Samuel. I think the three of you are at the forefront of initiative in different capacity that are here to build this higher trust I was mentioning. Can you spend a few minutes to explain, like concretely, what your institutions are doing to contribute to this agenda, and perhaps also like expand on what have been, from your perspective, the key development here at COP when it comes to building higher integrity, and maybe like to facilitate, we'll start with Annette and Samuel online. Let's start with you, Annette. Could you shed light on the ICV CM's initiative in that respect?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you today remotely. Sorry I can't be there in person. I'm delighted to talk about the progress that we've made with the Integrity Council. It's really quite remarkable to think that back at COP26, the Integrity Council was launched, and then to fast forward to today and see all the progress that's been made. We were launched as an independent governance body for the voluntary carbon market, and we really have a very important mission, which, among other things, was to really establish a sort of universal standard for what a high integrity carbon credit should look like. And that's very important because to build confidence in the market, I think we all need to have a common understanding about the quality of the carbon credits. And, as you know, the history here is that there was really no standardization. Programs used different standards, and obviously credits that were issued were of varying quality. So this has been a very important mission of ours, and I believe that the work that we did in building collaboration and a common understanding universally for what we call our core carbon principles has been very, very important. And so we have launched our core carbon principles, which establish that universal benchmark. We have a CCP, or core carbon principle rulebook, that essentially animates those principles. It tells participants how we're going to assess their standards against those principles. And the CCPs apply both to the carbon crediting programs and to the underlying credits. I'm delighted to say, to tell you about the progress that we've made. I mean, we launched our framework in July, and already we are now at a point less than 6 months later where 98% carbon crediting programs that represent 98% of the current market have applied to be assessed against our CCPs. So that to me shows incredible buy-in. We are at this point really meticulously assessing our methodologies for both existing and new credits, with the first assessment results anticipated to be in the first quarter of next year. So we are, the train's left the station, so to speak. We're really, we've made great progress. I would say also that what we took out of COP was a tremendous energy and enthusiasm for what can be achieved with the voluntary carbon markets. And we were very gratified for the endorsements that we received. As a number of exchanges are looking at launching the CCP labeled trades. The Commodity Future Trading Commission, as you know, announced that they published a proposal, draft guidance on the voluntary carbon market that we're delighted to say really accords with our core carbon principles. We've worked very closely with the CFTC and others to ensure that that we do have a common understanding of high quality. We got endorsements from John Kerry and Mark Carney for our work and a number of NGOs. And so we're really delighted to see the governmental and regulatory endorsements that we've received, and so I think we are, and again with the cooperation and collaboration with organizations such as those that are represented here today, I'm very optimistic that we're going to make very good progress in building a high integrity voluntary carbon market.
Thank you, Annette. Let me turn to you, Dirk. And there's been quite a buzz of activities at the IETA Pavilion, like myself participating in quite a few meetings there. Can you share your perspective and the role of independent standards in this context and to address some of the key challenges like being identified?
You guys hear me? Not yet. There we go. I don't want to disturb the Norwegians next door who seem to be having a cocktail party. I think it's very brave of us to try to be more exciting than the Norwegians, but it has been a pretty exciting COP for a lot of what I would call the political messaging around carbon markets. And some of that has occurred at our pavilion, where it's really private sector voices often, but also a couple of the events that the COP presidency helped to instigate. And one of them, Annette referenced, I think, where there was an opportunity for the meta standard efforts of the ICVCM and the VCMI and SBTI to kind of stand on the same stage and talk about working collaboratively to build more integrity. Our piece of that was a follow-on where we managed to get all of the CORSIA-approved carbon crediting standards to sign a joint statement, pledging to work more closely together, pledging to submit their programs to the ICVCM for assessment against the core carbon principles. And later that day, there was a roundtable that the COP presidency held to kind of celebrate these successes, also with Secretary Kerry from the United States talking about the ETA that Pierre referenced, the Energy Transition Accelerator. That's an effort by some U.S. foundations and also some experts from different U.S. Leading NGOs that are participating in building out that new kind of accrediting model that hopefully is an additional contribution. And I guess when I've really reflected on the things that have happened this week, I think I started my week in our pavilion, but was soon in Benedict's pavilion in Singapore for carbon market events there. I was in one earlier today in Singapore. I was in one a couple of days ago in China and in Japan. And it's really, really just encouraging to see how many countries are talking about how they're going to use the flexibilities, and hopefully they'll pick up on the core carbon principles. They'll lean into the integrity channels that are being provided by these new initiatives. At AIDA, we're involved in the Integrity Council, I should say, that we're a part of the secretariat there, and part of our role is market formation and trying to prepare the groundwork for market participants to accept these new CCP labels, for them to have model contracts, which is one of the things that we've traditionally worked on that will reference core carbon principles, so that will hopefully accelerate work. And also we're really thrilled to be working with the World Bank and Singapore on the Climate Action Data Trust that will bring the registry data from all of those carbon crediting standards into a single portal, so that you can see everything in one place. And that might not sound very revolutionary, but in our market, it's an innovation that has been a long time coming. And so that's another place that we've been trying to add assistance. You mentioned I'm also on the board of Vera, and I'm also just pleased that Vera's own efforts to lean into this. I know that they're committed to the Climate Action Data Trust. They're putting their data into it as we speak, but also in helping to lead this sort of a collaborative effort to continue improvements through the ICVCM's continuous improvement program. So I don't know, I just think there's been an enormous kind of a show of force of interest in how market solutions are sort of ready for the next era and hopefully helping to deliver the Paris goals.
Thank you, Dirk. I don't know if Annette, Samuel, you can hear from where you are, but the more we talk about collaboration, the more excitement we get from our Norwegian neighbors. So, like, let's see if yeah, like, so now the challenge is on you, Samuel, from Silvera's perspective. Where do you see your contribution to establish this more credible market, and yes, what are the key next steps?
For sure. So just to introduce Silvera, essentially what we do is we use the latest in data science, satellite technology, machine learning, and analytical approaches to produce a huge amount of data and analysis to show the quality of each underlying asset. So it's a highly complementary approach to, for example, the ICBCM's approach, which is trying to raise the bar by putting a huge amount of effort into raising the standards of the governing bodies, the issuing standards, but also tightening the methodologies that issuing the credits. What we're essentially doing is actually assessing then each of the individual projects that have been issued under those methodologies. So we look at three key aspects of quality, each of which are reflected in the CCPs. So the CCPs are kind of more broader, they're looking at the issuing standards as well as the quality of the projects. But we look at, for example, the performance of the project. So we'll assess the way in which the project is reported. So, for example, if it's a forestry protection project, we'll actually redo the analysis that they provided showing that its performance. So we'll use the latest in machine learning and satellite data, and we've actually collaborated with the World Bank in the tech stack that we're deploying there. We'll also look at the additionality of the project, so we'll look at the modelling behind that and assess again whether the project has taken a high fidelity approach to its design, and then we'll look at the forward-looking risk of the project. And that's really helpful for a number of reasons, because by raising the bar at the methodological level, we will be able to cut a lot of the low quality credits out of the market, but there will still be a distribution of quality in the market, and so we're able to make that explicit. And then also we're able to support investors who are investing in the early stages of projects to understand the risk that they're exposed to in those early stages of the project. So we're essentially trying to reveal that distribution of quality and empower the market to search out high quality credits, hopefully enabling a kind of race to the top. But then we're also trying to provide that expertise further upstream in the market so that we can make sure that the credits that are coming downstream have got this newer level of technology embodied in them, and that buyers are empowered and investors are empowered to kind of limit their risk. So it's a very complementary approach, and we're collaborating very closely with the ICBCM, providing them with data on projects as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Samuel. I'd like to turn now to our representative from the countries and the validators, verifiers. I think with the as we discussed before and as Pierre presented, with the ongoing effort in the VCMs, it's an opportunity to build robust national frameworks, build national infrastructure, build local capacity for VCMs. Can you share your experience in your respective countries, and going forward, what you feel are the next steps to establish this trust in the market, and maybe starting with you, Benedict, and sharing the experience in Singapore.
Yeah, so thanks so much for the invitation to be on this panel and to share the experience that we have had. So we have been looking at carbon markets for a couple of years, but our experience has been shaped by what we are trying to do practically with many countries around the world. Currently about 10 to 20 different countries we are in at various stages of discussions. I don't think everyone would eventually translate to a markets collaboration, but there is definitely interest, and I think we hope to translate the majority of them into specific projects collaboration. I'd say in terms of what we need to get in place in order to enable some of these things, I broadly categorize it into two groups. The first bucket is really, I think, what has been captured in the slides on market readiness itself. So it's really about putting the systems, the frameworks in place that would enable the generation and the transfer of carbon credits from the host country to Singapore. And for that, what we are working to do is we are working to lay out a very clear and simple framework that both countries can understand, which is also easy for participants in both Singapore as well as the host countries to be able to actively participate in some of these projects. And more importantly, for the projects to be structured in a way that benefits not just only sit with the project developer, but actually flows through to the rest of the economy. And we think that's an important feature if we want to anchor the project within the country and for it to be recognized as something that actually brings real mutual benefits and will be able to last over the multiple project crediting periods itself. So that for us is quite important. The other important aspect is some of the infrastructure pieces, like helping the country put in place a registry in terms of tracking the units that are being generated and that are eventually being translated. So that's the first piece. The second piece actually is the more important piece. It's the policy framework. It's ensuring that the host country that we work with very closely is able to do some of the important building blocks of meeting their emissions targets. MRV systems, putting in place a robust target, and knowing what sort of mitigation activities sit within their overall mitigation plan. So things like what are certain project activities that will be part of their unconditional NDC, which are those that will be in their conditional NDC, and which are those that are above NDC. And this policy framework is important because even as we seek to undertake Article 6 collaborations with different countries, we don't want it to result in an erosion of ambition. So we need to choose activities for crediting that is clearly over and above what the country is already required to do itself. Because if we were to do activities that are within the unconditional part of the NDC, then essentially what it means is that that country will not be able to meet its emissions goals. And then that would actually hold back ambition. So those are the two big blocks that we are working on with different countries, and we hope that we'll be able to have deep partnerships with them and to be able to translate some of these frameworks to be able to generate concrete projects which are able to produce credits at the end of the day. Thanks.
Hello? Yeah, thank you very much, Benedict. Like very interesting. Like I think like to compare things, like I'd like to move to you, Adhika, on like sharing your experience in Pakistan and what's been the journey so far, and what do you see as the next milestone like on this path to developing markets in Pakistan? I think.
Thank you. I think I'm glad I'm speaking after Ben, because he has actually laid out the structure. Countries are looking to collaborate with countries like Pakistan and a host country. So we are looking at carbon market from all the angles. We are part of PMI. The PMI main focus is on the domestic carbon market, but there are streams on international carbon market policies, and there is a whole stream on MRV, which will be the main thing to start the work in Pakistan as well. And then there's stream for capacity building. With that, we are also working with TCAF now in 2 provinces with wastewater treatment project. So that's also something we are going to start working with World Bank on. We are also developing a VCM framework to have that readiness assessment of countries, of Pakistan participating in a VCM market. There are a couple of other projects with USAID. We are trying to explore a voluntary carbon market. We have a VCM committee, which is chaired by Vera, co-chaired by Gold Standard at this point. We have a MOU with Vera. Recently, we signed. Gold standards under the process. So from all angles, we are trying to get into this and to have some projects rolling in Pakistan. One of the biggest projects of our region on mangroves is in Pakistan, the Indus Delta project. But the most important of all of this is the policy guideline which Pakistan has developed. And those policy guidelines give a very clear idea about where the country stands. It has a conditional and unconditional goal breakdown, sectoral breakdown of our NDCs, which was not in our NDCs initially. We have a 35% goal of conditional NDCs and 15% unconditional NDCs. So this will give a clear idea to the countries and the investors which are the sectors open for corresponding adjustments. Then there's a whole process of how you can get the NOC and corresponding adjustments. What will be the fee? How much Pakistan is anticipating that will be kept for our own NDCs and how much it will be correspondingly adjusted. And what are we doing under MRV? We are part of the Climate Data Trust Registry. Our demo registry is ready, so we are hoping that we can also launch that soon. And initially, we are not looking at the developing standards. It will be acting like a register. We are not going to issue the credits from that registry, but eventually moving forward. So all these projects which Pakistan is doing, all the researches, all the work with all the development partners, the idea is that we open this market. As I always say in my country, that we entered the party late when the CDM was going on, and our neighboring countries really got advantage of that. So we should try that. We should not miss this opportunity. And the roadmap which you presented actually touch upon all the areas where we require support further as well. And some areas we are already working on. So we're looking forward to the work you guys will be doing.
Thank you very much. And finally, I'd like to turn to you and to close this first round of questions and like focusing more on developing the local capacity, like as a verifier, validator, what is your take on the challenges and needs to to be done to improve things?
No? Good. Well, thank you so much for the invitation to be here. And I'd like to also extend a thank you from our current chair of the International Accreditation Forum, Emanuele Riva. He's the head of the Italian accreditation body. First and foremost, since we're talking about trust, accreditation is built on trust. It's all about building a harmonized framework for the accreditation of third-party validation and verification bodies and other conformity assessment bodies. IEF recently celebrated its 30th anniversary. It's the membership organization of AEBs globally. It represents over 108 countries. We have 97 accreditation bodies who are members. And a recent survey of those members shows that we now have over 50 accreditation bodies operating greenhouse gas accreditation programs globally. That means we have also over 300 accredited validation and verification bodies or assurance providers now. And all of those verification bodies are accredited to the same base standards, ISO 14065 and ISO 14064-3, which is really kind of the nuts and bolts of how you do a verification or validation. Under that, we have the programs, regulatory programs, voluntary programs. There are, hundreds. So, that's part of the challenge, right? Is, when you have that many programs, harmonization is really difficult. Sometimes we're trying to harmonize, and I work, ANAB works a lot with the voluntary market in the US, with the CORSIA-approved programs, whereas in some of the other countries, they're working with their national regulatory bodies and local programs. But accreditation has two fundamental purposes. The first purpose is to assure the quality, consistency, and transparency of conformity assessment systems. And here we're talking about greenhouse gas validation and verification. And second, to assist in capacity development and to make continual improvements towards a robust and harmonized infrastructure for accredited validation and verification. And we do that through a multilateral recognition arrangement. So not only do the VVBs get audited, we get audited. We get peer evaluated every 4 years. So that MLA sets up that harmonization structure and that infrastructure. Current priorities for us at IEF to build that capacity and to grow the system. Dialogue is really important right now. Key stakeholders such as the ICVCM, the VCMI, the programs, and I really want to emphasize the importance of the relationship between the program and the AB, or the accreditation body. That communication has to be ongoing. It's like a continual feedback loop to make sure things run smoothly. And also relationships with groups like the World Bank. IEF and World Bank have an MOU to work together on building that capacity. We also have an MOU with UNIDO to seek, through those MOUs, we can seek project funding opportunities to do workshops, collaborative learning opportunities, mentoring, the kinds of things that we try to undertake to build the capacity up. Lastly, harmonizing how we accredit, because we do have so many different programs and new types of validation and verification, right? Carbon product footprinting, there's scope 3 accounting, now we're talking about CBAM, so there's lots of things coming down the road at us. So the main things we're working on are those specific areas, but also trying to come up with a cohesive set of technical scopes of accreditation so that we're more consistent in how we scope out the accreditation. But there's still a lot of tire kicking to do in all of this. So I think I really just want to get across that infrastructure exists for a reason. I'm really excited to see it, growing. I said 300 VVBs, and that's definitely picked up quite a bit in the last year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, to use these systems that we've built, right? We have all kinds of good processes and procedures that we can put in place for things like fraudulent activity, so on and so forth. So it's a great toolbox, and I really look forward to working with all of the stakeholders as we move forward.
Thank you, and I think you've already anticipated my wrap up for this first round. If I hear you, we need partnerships. We need it takes a village. I think that's also a key takeaway I take. It takes a village to build this integrity. We have it's actually even a subset of the people we need around the table who are represented here. We need the technology. We need to build the capacity. We need the regulatory framework and work all together. So thank you. I'd like to move, and this time I think we negotiated a bit of quiet, not for so long, so this will be the incentive to be a bit more succinct in the response. So I give each of you now 2 minutes to help build and react to the presentation Pierre made and the roadmap and kind of some of the areas where the World Bank Group is considering playing a role, and say where the World Bank Group can help, whether this convening power as a World Bank Group, or you heard about the World Bank through the different funds I see in terms of investment. It would be interesting to see where you see the most potential for the World Bank to help and towards this common goal of having trusted carbon markets. So I'll start with a representative from the countries and principle setters and validators. I think again, you heard from this different initiative that the World Bank Group has. So, maybe starting with you, going back to Singapore, Ben. Can you share your perspective on where you feel in the country experience, and local government may need more help from a group like the World Bank Group?
Yeah, thanks so much. So I thought the World Bank has got multitude of instruments and tools within its arsenal. But maybe one area in which it could work on is to maybe bring together this arsenal in a more coordinated and fashion itself. So you've got a lot of like markets-related programs that the World Bank provides. Under the World Bank Group, there's MIGA that does risk insurance. The World Bank is also involved in concessionary financing. The World Bank also provides technical support and grants. And in some instances, the World Bank also works with different countries on things like results-based payment. But many at times, you see all these things happening like within their own programs itself. And I do recognize that. I'm not sure whether this is feasible or not, but we have had discussions with the World Bank before in terms of trying to break down some of these silos. And I know it is not an easy process, but if we can pull everything together, identify maybe a flagship project, and draw upon all these various instruments that the World Bank has to unlock and to be able to crowd in other private sector investors, other countries to help support, I thought that could make a quantum difference itself. And I know it's challenging because I've had this discussion with colleagues within the World Bank, but this is sort of like a wish list. Thanks.
Feedback well taken. I think it's not just for carbon credits, I think, but it's feedback well taken. And I think that's the ambition of this roadmap, working together, bringing the different forces to in a more integrated way. Going back online, Annette, what will be your recommendation and where you feel the areas of collaboration with the World Bank Group from ICVCM's standpoint?
Well, obviously, we at the Integrity Council, we're delighted to cooperate and coordinate with the World Bank. I think, governments around the world we now see are recognizing the value of the voluntary carbon markets and the importance of having a uniform standard like the CCPs. And I think that, we've also heard in the earlier panel, and I thought Dirk put it very well about the focus sort of end to end, not just the standards, but the infrastructure, all of these other issues. I think the World Bank, obviously, with its relationship with a lot of these governments, will be able to, play an important role. And I think, going forward, as I said, I think what we've heard is a lot more buy-in on sort of the essential building blocks of a high integrity market. And I think to take it to the next step, it'll be very important to collaborate, to have universal standards. The World Bank obviously did a wonderful job working with AIDA and others on the carbon registry, the meta registry. Those kinds of contributions are really critical to this effort. So I look forward to taking all of these building blocks and working collaboratively with everyone involved here and others in the ecosystem to make further progress.
Thank you, Annette. Let's go back to Pakistan. I think a lot of already ongoing collaboration with the bank at different level, but taking it to the next level, when you see your immediate challenges, immediate needs, where do you see, I'm getting coached. See, I'm learning. Where do you see like the most help could come from the bank group?
Yeah, thank you. I think I will echo what Ben said also, that a holistic kind of approach will be really helpful, where all the angles are looked at and combined together to support a project. So direct investment is something which will be good. Then for policy and government infrastructure, aligning with integrity and safeguards will be beneficial for Pakistan. In the presentation, he mentioned about guarantees, bonds, sectoral level, policy-based credit. So all these are the support which will be really, if you enhance this. And direct investment, I think World Bank invested in Vietnam with with green bonds, and there's a project where you're developing credit, which Citibank is buying. So it's a good mechanism, and I really support that as well. Discussing with the team of World Bank for Pakistan as well. And also the roadmap highlighted there's a guarantee instruments to avoid the risk associated. So that's also something which will be helpful for especially the VCM market to go forward. And innovation area which remains important for Pakistan when it comes to technology, when it comes to new approaches of carbon sequestration. So these are the areas I will be highlighting from our side.
Thank you so much. And Anne, from the validator, you started to share some of your ideas in the previous round, but like specifically in terms of working with the group, like where do you see a partnership with you going forward?
Yeah, I think one of the main challenges that we face as an accreditation body, and the VVBs face this problem as well, is competence and capacity of auditors and personnel right now. We all seem to be sort of fighting over the same people, and that doesn't work so well when you're trying to be independent and make sure you don't have any conflicts of interest and you have the right people where they need to be. This is particularly acute in the forestry sector right now, and the REDD+ projects for us have been a real challenge. Getting people on the ground. The audit process is taking long amounts of time. I mean, some of these validations and verifications are stretching over months, and VVBs are juggling multiple projects at once. So, you put this down, you pick this up. It's really hard for us to follow that process as a accreditation body. So I think one of the areas where we really hope that we can improve is with the the digital infrastructure and the work that World Bank's doing around next generation MRV. We're really looking forward to trying to see, okay, here's the old validation and verification process, and how is that going to work now if the data is going to the cloud and we're running algorithms instead of doing sending people to do plot measurements and so on and so forth. So I think that could really be useful and leverage your convening and your resources to get there. Another example would be the green hydrogen space. I watched the World Bank panel that you had on the financing for green hydrogen, and brought a lot of ideas to my head in terms of, okay, that's another area we're struggling with at IAF right now, so we can collaborate on that and try to put together some good resources, workshops, capacity building, because if we don't have competent people, we're not going to be able to pull this off.
Thank you. And enough me to conclude this panel discussion, I'd like to move, and that's my IFC bias, to the private sector and the private sector perspective. I think a lot of the discussion has been on the integrity on the issuer side, etc. But we also have, let's say, issues and the need to enforce integrity on the buyer side, and how can we restore the demand on the buyer side? That would be my first question. And the second one is, when you talk about integrity, how do you go and how do you see the process to make sure you don't introduce disincentive in terms of decarbonization plan of the buyers on the private sector side? So maybe Dirk, starting with you, what's your take and like on these two complex issues in 2 minutes?
I would just, I guess I'd start by saying I think the whole theory of change with the ICVCM has been that the scale will start to follow once we get the integrity right. And I think that's kind of where we are, that we're at a kind of an inflection point. I do think that a lot of corporates are also watching what's happening here in the negotiations around Article 6, wanting to see a positive outcome. And I do think the investment will be ready to scale. But it does also come back to these national frameworks, right? Because really, we've put a lot of pressure on the voluntary carbon market to deliver the global piece of this. When in fact, my organization believes that, voluntary is kind of like a way station on the way to compliance markets, but that to really mobilize the capital that's needed, we need the Partnership for Market Implementation to move ahead with urgency, right? And for a lot of these tools that are available to help to provide those national structures that will really build the trust and confidence far more than what we do in the voluntary side. But voluntary is important, but it's not the whole game. Yeah, I always come back to what was the State and Trends report this last time. What was this like? It's 750 or 800 billion dollars in compliance market value against like 2 billion in the voluntary side. Why are we focused on the two? Well, partly because we think it can fill in a lot of gaps, and it does have the potential to grow quickly. So that's, I think, what's burning on my mind is urgency. We need to get moving. I hope that's a good answer.
It's a good answer, and and in 2 minutes. No, thank you. It's very, very interesting. And now, Samuel, I think we'll turn to you to share your perspective at Silveras and where you see the need to boost the demand and what needs to be done to boost the demand from the private sector, and how rating agencies can help in that respect.
Yeah, I completely agree with Dirk in the sense that the voluntary carbon market, if we're going to get to the sorts of scale that is being discussed in a lot of the reports that talk about 100 billion by 2030, what you actually need is some pretty hard sticks or some hard carrots in terms of incentives, right? And the most scalable way of doing that probably is either an incorporation of voluntary carbon market style crediting into compliance markets. So for example, what we're seeing Singapore doing with their carbon tax, where there's a quota allowable of voluntary carbon market credits in that system, that creates some real demand with some real kind of hard incentives behind it. Or a more fulsome definition of net zero, which is kind of required of corporates to comply with, where again voluntary carbon market style credits or voluntary carbon market credits are deliverable into that kind of net zero commitment. And when we see these sorts of mechanisms scaling, that's where we'll see real scale come in the voluntary carbon markets or in project style crediting. But the issue there is, we've all been watching this year, we've been watching the kind of issues that the market's been having. That actually really translates into a lot of hesitancy in policy making communities to actually place more trust in the market and in these mechanisms. And so I think what we can do in terms of partnerships is restore that confidence. So whatever the World Bank can do to lend political support, to organise and drive cooperation between all of these initiatives to add quality into the market, I think that's really, really important. And obviously in the interim, the main motivation for corporates to engage in the market is some sort of halo effect from investing in the market. And if we're not able to, again, give real confidence in the integrity of the market, and again, give that halo effect, so give a kind of pat on the back, kind of give some political support to the market and those who are engaging in it, we will see a kind of continued subdual of the market. So I think it's really, really important that the World Bank kind of musters its credibility and its kind of political credence. And we've seen how the press has responded to, for example, the president of the World Bank's intervention and kind of support for the market. That was received really well. So I think actually these sort of symbolic engagements, these kind of statements of support actually really, really do mean things for the market. So I think it's really important that we all pull together. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. I think, very rich discussion. It would be difficult to bring in 30 seconds all the ideas, but I hear loud and clear the need for the World Bank to work more closely together and bring all the tools under the same umbrella. The ideas of exploring new sectors and the hydrogen and see what we can do there, scaling up carbon-linked financing, building capacity at all levels from the regulatory standpoint to the auditors, etc. So a lot of fresh ideas and that I think we'll take away with us. But as I said, it's the start of a discussion. It's the start of partnership as part of the roadmap. I think there will be more discussion and engagement with all of you and more. But before concluding this discussion, I'd like to see if there's any question in the audience to our panelists. No. I feel, are you coming to all my panels or just to that? So, question from recourse.
So I'm Alison Doig. I am from Recourse, but this isn't a recourse issue. I do some consultancy work and have been advising civil society on the carbon markets. And it's actually a question very specifically, I mean, others might want to answer, but to the World Bank. The World Bank has chosen to promote heavily carbon markets and to get countries ready. You've talked a lot about the financial integrity of these markets, and I'm sure your accounting mechanisms are lovely. What I want to know is, in making this choice, have you done a scientific assessment of a growing, expanding market, allowing global north companies and countries to continue to use and emit in the location they're at? If we allow these carbon markets to expand, we're not having the reductions that we need to see. I mean, it's not just our view. Science would say you need to cut that carbon and keep that forest standing. You need to cut that carbon and allow that woman to have a clean cook stove or that person to have energy access. So what scientific study have you shown that if the scale of market that you're looking at doesn't undermine the scientific integrity of staying below 1.5 degrees?
I'm not going to talk for the bank, but Pierre, do you want to talk for the bank? I can talk then for IFC. What's our approach? For IFC, it's transaction by transaction. It's transaction by transaction, and what we would do. So it's not as part of a bigger strategy, but at the transaction level, we would look at the integrity. Yeah.
So you've made a choice in promoting the carbon market as a bank. This is why I'm making it to you. I'm not questioning your methodology. That's for another panel, maybe. That's not what I want to get into. It's really about the choice of the World Bank and other banks to go down this route when actually, overall, the carbon markets, if we go this route and expand at the rate you're saying, you're allowing emissions to happen. The buyer is going to be emitting. And that's undermining 1.5 if you look at the IPCC and other scientific. So that's the point.
Simple. At the transaction level and the kind of standard we would apply, that's why I'm saying at IFC, I'm not going to talk for how the bank approach. We will look at the issuer side and what's like the credibility of the issuer, and we will look and have criteria on the buyer side, and that's what was implied in one of my questions to the panelists, to make sure we don't undermine the decarbonization plan of the buyer. What we want to offset through this carbon credit is the part that cannot be, at the time, based on current technology. Yeah, you can apply standard, the SBTI, etc. Do the buyer have a credible decarbonization plan? Is it backed by science, etc.? And then what is left that cannot be abated at the moment, this is what we can offset. These are the self-imposed standards, and this is what would be our approach. And that's something I cannot talk in broad terms, etc. I'm saying this is, for IC, it's transaction by transaction, and applying these standards, we're very confident we are not undermining the 1.5 degrees objective. But I'll let Pierre talk for the bank.
Thank you. I think, and I will give the mic to Benedict, but I think Aurélien answered for the demand side. For the supply side, the World Bank has not chosen to support a market of a certain size. We have chosen to support those countries that are willing to participate in carbon markets, no matter its size. So that means supporting countries beginning with their Article 6 strategies so that they can implement carbon markets in a way that is coherent with their NDCs. So that's really the heart and the beginning of the engagement in supporting countries.
Yeah. So perhaps I can just add a little, and this is more from a country's perspective rather from a bank's perspective. When we work on carbon markets projects with different countries, one of the most basic questions that we ask is, would this project that we are working on bring an additional abatement that would not have been realized otherwise? If it doesn't, and the abatement would have happened in any case, then our preference is not to use carbon markets. Our preference is to look at other instruments, results-based financing, grants, other forms of support, concessionary financing, market-based financing, if some of these instruments work. And only when these things don't work, and then we ask ourselves, the abatement wouldn't even have happened in the first place, then you bring carbon markets onto bear. So our approach is that we see it more as a spectrum of instruments that we use to unlock as much abatement as we can. In order to close the temperature gap, and there's really a very significant gap, it's trying to close the temperature gap as much as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. I think this brings us to an end. I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. Thank you to our panelists, and now, yes, it's Sunday night, and we'll let our neighbors celebrate, but thank you again, and thank you, Annette and Sam, for joining us online. Very much appreciated on a Sunday. Thank you.